deputies were about to make a move, Eli had growled, "Stand down. Do not fire your weapons." He hadn't taken his eyes off the suspect, and he saw a terrible rictus of a grin cross the other man's face, followed by a gruff laugh. What happened next was surreal. It seemed to take place in slow motion. The air turned to a thick, pulsating fog, and the ground felt spongy beneath Eli's feet, causing him to sway slightly. The shot echoed in all directions, and the dead man folded to the ground. Inside the house, the woman and the kids shrieked in horror. "Oh, shit," Eli had murmured. "Shit." The two deputies rushed past him toward the house. The ambulance, parked up on the road until the shot was fired, sped down the driveway. Eli walked toward a nearby maple tree, stepped behind it, and lost his lunch. Some hero. As it turned out, the woman had a pair of black eyes and a broken arm. The kids were thoroughly traumatized, but physically unharmed as far as he knew. After the state police arrived with their CSI team and the county coroner, Eli had returned to the sheriff's department, the very office he was sitting in now, to write up the required reports. Then sheriff at the time, Dutch McCutcheon, had been out of town that day, taking his wife Clara for her first round of chemotherapy, so he'd missed the action. Upon his return, Dutch made up for lost time by reaming out his brain-dead idiot of a deputy for the better part of half an hour. "When you approach an armed suspect," he'd raged, "you have your weapon drawn and ready. You do not go into a situation like some fricking hotshot TV cowboy. You could have been killed." After the lecture, Dutch had bought Eli a drink over at Sully's Bar and Grill, told him not to come near the department until he'd been, 1, debriefed by the appropriate state officials, and 2, cleared by an officially sanctioned shrink. Eli smiled sadly, remembering Dutch. The old man had died of a heart attack 10 years ago, a month into his retirement, while fishing up at Flathead Lake. Deciding his thoughts had taken an unnecessarily grim turn, Eli lowered his hands, sat forward with a creak of the springs under his chair, and stood. Given some of the problems he'd faced, he reckoned a potential blizzard wasn't the worst thing that could happen in this county, not by a long shot. Most likely the storm would fizzle out before it did any real damage. Those weather people, in his opinion, were given to drama. Just the same, Eli felt a little uneasy. His sister Sarah would say he was borrowing trouble. Dutch McCutcheon would have told him to pull his head out of his backside and be grateful for all the good things in his life. Like his two best friends, Cord Hollister and J.P. McCall. And his job, which he loved about 85% of the time. He had a fair amount of money put away, savings and an inheritance from his and Sarah's paternal grandparents, and he owned his house and a few acres of land outright. Had a good truck, too, paid for and still under warranty. And then there was Brynne Bailey, back home to stay. Brynne, his high school sweetheart, the girl he'd essentially betrayed. Eli was thankful that she'd returned to the creek for sure. Never mind that she barely gave him the proverbial time of day. Probably still carried a torch for the man she'd left behind in Boston. But she was here now, in Painted Pony Creek, Montana, running her parents' popular restaurant and bar, Bailey's. And speaking of Bailey's, he'd agreed, a little reluctantly, to meet his friends there for coffee and a few rounds of good old-fashioned bullshit. Eli checked his watch. It was one of those jazzy Dick Tracy gizmos, a Christmas gift from Sarah and her kids, Eric and Haley. A text bounced off some satellite and came in for a landing with a ping, startling him a little. He wasn't all that big on modern technology. Sometimes wished he'd been born in the days of swinging saloon doors, dance hall girls, dusty streets, and buckboards. He shook his head, amused. He was a seasoned officer. He'd stood toe-to-toe with armed criminals, not just that once, but half a dozen times over the course of his career. But this damn watch made him jumpy. God only